Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Historical Gamer. You can call me Matt, and we are back for, I think it's episode 6 of the Single Malt Strategy podcast. I can't quite remember. With me, as always, is the Strategy Wargamer, Jean. How you doing today, Jean?
Not bad, Matt. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. So why don't we jump into it? What have you been up to lately? What have you been playing?
Well, I would say a couple over the last few weeks I've been playing Strategic Command, but I'll save it for another podcast. I wanted to touch base with you about the game that just came out. I'm sure you've been playing it. In fact, I know you've been playing it because I've seen your videos on YouTube, Ultimate General Civil War.
Yeah, I've been playing the hell out of it. I think I've streamed 5 or 6 hours of it in just the first 3 or 4 days since it came out.
Yeah. I seen your tweets. It was like, I'm going to bed now. It's only 5 a.m. I'm like, don't you have work too?
Well,
like,
that was Friday night, okay?
Okay, I was going to say, because if you had to get up at 7 a.m., I was going to be like, oh gosh, you're going to need some good coffee there.
I may have taken a day off of work so I could play it all day, though. That might have happened.
Hopefully your boss doesn't listen to this.
Whatever, it's a vacation day. I can do with it what I want.
That's a good point. So Ultimate General Civil War came out, and this kind of came out of left field because I think they made an announcement at the beginning of the week. It was like a Steam. They linked you to Steam and the trailer for the game. And I actually found out about it because of you. I was going through my Twitter feed, and it was like late at night. I think I just got back from the firehouse, and I was like, and you posted something on Twitter. It says Ultimate General, and I saw something after that didn't say Gettysburg, and I'm like, wait, Ultimate General Civil War. I'm like, and I clicked the link that I think you posted, and it took me to the trail, and I was just like, I can't believe it. This is insane. It was more insane that they were going to release it in November, which was we were in November. So me and you got it. I know we've both been playing it, and I wanted to hear your initial take on it.
My initial take is that I love it. I think one thing we need to call out with the game is it is an early access game. So Ultimate General Civil War is not a final release, if you will. There are certainly some features or capabilities that I hope are coming that are not there yet. One of the big ones is the ability to kind of see the elevation hexes, where like when you're looking at the map, if you want to see elevation right now, you kind of have to eyeball it and hope your depth perception looks good, and you're right about this being a hill as opposed to putting your troops into a valley and getting massacred. But aside from that, there's only a few minor things that I'd say, like, oh, they could tidy this up or tweak this or whatever. It is an incredibly well-polished game. The maps in it are absolutely beautiful. And it is, in my opinion, very challenging, and I've been having a lot of fun. There's some interesting new features with it, which we'll get into here in a little bit, but all around, I've been thoroughly impressed. I thought they did a great job with Ultimate General Gettysburg, the original game in the series, and I thought they did a great job so far with Ultimate General Civil War. It's the closest thing to a successor to Civil War Generals 2 in the context of the campaign, which they've added. That's something new with multiple linked battles. They kind of had it before, and I guess we can, maybe what we should do is we should take a step back and say, what is Ultimate General Civil War? And if you've played Ultimate General Gettysburg, what it is it's a real-time combat game, which puts you in command of some number of troops, it depends on the scenario, as you fight through the Battle of Gettysburg. So in Ultimate General Gettysburg, the original game in the series, you start out with the early scenarios, pitting Heath versus Buford, and then Hill's Corps coming up, fighting against Reynolds' Corps coming up, and then you've got Ewell coming down the flank and outflanking the 11th Corps, and you've got all these various scenarios. So you'll generally have one battle that's fought on, is it McPherson's Farm or McPherson's Ridge and Seminary Ridge, and then you'll have another battle that's fought on Culp's Hill. It's a separate engagement, and then you'll have a battle for, the Round Tops, and these all link together so that you fight a series of battles from July 1st to, I think it goes as far as July 4th. You fight a series of battles, and each one progresses into the next one. So your casualties carry over, your wins or losses carry over, and they have something like 40 or 50 different variants. So you can fight the historical Battle of Gettysburg, but then you also have all these different variants of a decisive Confederate defeat or a Union decisive defeat, or anything in between. Maybe the Confederates take Culp's Hill, and now the Union have to counter everything you can think of. But it's all within the context of Gettysburg. And one thing, is and again, the casualties carry over. These units aren't changing, so that's what Gettysburg is. Civil War pulls you out a bit. So Civil War, and I haven't gotten to the Gettysburg battle yet because it's not in. The biggest omission so far in early access is a lot of the battles that are coming are still not in yet. So early access has...
I just find that interesting how, you have Ultimate General Gettysburg, which they released, but the scenario Gettysburg for Ultimate General Civil War is not yet released.
Well, it's very different. So have you played Shiloh yet?
Oh, yeah. Shiloh is... that was. I gotta admit I'm trying to get the name of the developer again. Game Labs. I mean, they did an incredible job because Shiloh felt so realistic. I mean, it just. I don't know. It felt like I was reading the book, but actually playing. It was just. I'm trying to find the words for it, but it was basically it positioned the units exactly where they were. On the day of the battle, as far as I can tell, where the corps were, how they were coming onto the battlefield, and it just felt, if it just felt historical, it put me right in the shoes.
It feels like Shiloh, right? Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree with you. I think they hit the nail on the head with Shiloh for sure. But kind of going back to what I was saying, and because we can get into talking about what Shiloh does right, but what I was talking about is that, so what Ultimate General Civil War, Gettysburg is these linked scenarios, all within the context of Gettysburg. In Ultimate General Civil War, they take a different approach. You actually create your own commander, your own general, and then you can choose to fight for either the Union or the Confederates. You pick a series of traits, so you could be like a political general like Nathan Banks. You could be a military general, someone whose career was in the Army their whole life, someone like Robert E. Lee, who was in the Army at the time the war broke out. Or you could take a businessman, someone who had left the military and gone into private life as someone making money like Grant, yeah. Or I think was McClellan also in business as well. I think he was. And then depending on what you choose, depending on how you set up your general, you get these different perks. So you could be better at organization, better at training, better at scouting, at army organization. And all of these different traits have different impacts in the game. And we haven't even gotten to the battles yet. So Ultimate General Gettysburg is literally a battle game. It's a war game. You only fight battles. There's nothing else. There's no army management. There's no, choosing which battle to go fight. There's no different battles in different theaters. It's all Gettysburg and a bunch of scenarios. Ultimate General Civil War has you create this, this character, this person, and then you actually have to fight out a series of battles. And it's almost like Panzer General in a sense, where you have this core unit, this core force that you build up, and then you carry it over from battle to battle. And it can gain experience, it can have units destroyed, you can add replacements, you can upgrade weapons. It's almost like a hybrid, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, but it's almost like a hybrid between Civil War Generals 2, in terms of the the weapons management and upgrading weapons based on how many enemy guns you captured or how well you do in the previous battle, and Panzer General, where you carry over specific units from battle to battle, and you kind of build this elite deck of cards or elite deck of units that you progress through the war.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. When I first saw the game, my initial reaction was. I'll be honest, when I clicked the link and I took it to the website and it had like a big picture of a map of the eastern seaboard of Virginia and North Carolina, I honestly thought the game was more on terms of campaign mixed with tactical. So you can develop your army, you move them on the campaign map, and when they collide, it would generate a map, and then you would fight it out. That's what I thought. And initially, when I first saw the picture on their website, but then I started reading more into it, and the more I read into it, it kind of reminded me of Civil War Generals 2, where if you you're fighting a battle, whoever wins, it'll say, all right, well, you won the Battle of Gettysburg as the Confederates. Now we're going to go on the attack. I'm going to make a new scenario called the attack on Washington, and it goes like that. So I would, it's more like Civil War Generals 2. And I mean, I'm not saying that, that is a good thing and it worked for Civil War Generals 2. The one thing that I really take away from the game that I really, really like is, it might sound, might not sound, what's the word I'm looking for? It might not sound like energetic, and every game has it, but the quality of the maps and the unit animations. I've been playing the game for a few hours now, and I still get like a thrill every time I see the entire line of soldiers just firing off at a single volley. And one thing I really do like that they put this in this game, and I really appreciate it, is you can actually tell your units to hold fire. And I think it's very important, especially in this game, because supply is critical. Did you run into issues with that?
Oh yeah. So I was streaming the other night, and I was playing the Battle of Shiloh, and I was attacking Shiloh Church, and I had taken Shiloh Church, and then I was attacking the what was it called? Oh my goodness, I can't remember it. The Hornet's Nest. That's what it was. I was attacking the Hornet's Nest, and I was advancing, and apparently a Union brigade got in behind me. And it wasn't a big deal. I detached a brigade to go deal with it. But what I didn't realize was that brigade actually captured my only supply wagon. So I rapidly went from, doing well and pushing the Union back all along the line with one little, area to mop up. And all of a sudden, they captured my supply line. They ran the supply wagon off the map. And my army continued fighting for, 15 more minutes. And then they all started running out of ammo. So I had to, start trying to melee and charge my way through the Hornet's Nest, and it did not go well. I think 90% of my troops died, and I lost the battle. So, it was not a positive experience. Just real quick, kind of getting back. So, as you mentioned, it's a Civil War Generals 2 style game in that there are a series of linked battles. Your success in one battle allows you to improve your core units going forward, as I already mentioned, but you don't really alter the scenarios you're going to play, at least not at this point. Remember, it's still in early access. Maybe at some point you will. But if you win Bull Run as the Confederates, you go down the Shiloh campaign route. And if you win or lose Shiloh, then you go down the Gaines Mill campaign route. And I assume if you win at Gaines Mill, you go down the Malvern Hill campaign route. So each one of these iconic battles, each one of these historical battles, has a series of small, minor engagements around it that you end up fighting, and then you just kind of, it's like, all right, I'm going down the checklist of this battle, now this battle, now this battle. And in the final version, there's going to be a Battle of Richmond or Washington, which I assume is kind of like the last hurrah. Like if you're successful in all these places, then you can win the war, kind of the way Civil War Generals 2 did. But it's not really dynamic, like you said, you don't have an army, you're not marching around a campaign map. They're just a series of engagements that you go and you fight one after another.
And to be honest, I mean, for anybody listening, I like this game. I really love this game. But I if anybody's listening and you're a developer, I would love a game where you can combine the tactical and strategic aspects of a Civil War game. I mean, if I can make my army in Washington D.C. Send a portion of it toward Manassas and another portion, and actually direct the armies on a strategic map. And when they get close, whether it randomly generates another map or you zoom into a tactical map, I would love something like that. And I honestly thought, as soon as I saw a campaign map on this, the moment I clicked the link, I thought that's what was in this game. But maybe I'll have to hold that hope for Ultimate General Civil War 2.
Right. Well, I mean, it's definitely a challenge. I actually enjoy this style of progression. What I really like, and we'll talk about the battles specifically in a few minutes, but what I really like about this campaign structure is the way they've surrounded each one of these battles with minor engagements. When I say minor engagements, they're not really minor engagements. They're supposed to be. So, for example, Bull Run has, if you're playing as the Confederates, it has like Shiloh. If you're playing as the Confederates and you play the Battle of Bull Run, After that comes the Shiloh campaign, and there's 2 small minor engagements that tie into the Shiloh campaign that you can use to increase your reputation, which we'll talk about in a second here, and also gain experience and money and weapons so you can better equip your forces. So the idea is you're fighting these ancillary sort of side battles that then feed into the main engagement. And I love that, because if you look at any of the Civil War battles, historically speaking, if you look at, for example, Second Manassas, you had the Battle of Cedar Mountain a couple of weeks, I think it was, before that. You had, a multiple-day engagement at the Battle of Second Manassas. So you really have this sort of sense of there are these minor conflicts that lead up to the main engagement. Antietam, before that you had the battles in South Mountain, you had the Battle of Harper's Ferry. So there are all these sort of side pieces that start skirmishing and conflicting with each other as you head into the main engagement, and then there's the big main engagement. And the game really feeds into that. They're not really minor engagements. They're not in any way historical. So like they've got the Battle of Philippoli. It's the first battle in the Union campaign. The Battle of Philippoli historically was called the Battle of the Philippoli Races, which was an engagement in Western Virginia where 3,000 Union troops surprised 800 Confederates. I think there were like 40 casualties, and then the 800 Confederates ran. They just ran. This was in 1861. It was the first, quote-unquote major.
Involved in that battle, I think?
It was called Philippoli. It's when you play the Union campaign, it's your very first fight that you fight.
Was that Was that McClellan involved in that battle? I remember he won a battle in the Western Western Virginia. That kind of it was a small battle. I don't know if it was that one.
Yes.
It was that. Okay.
So it wasn't. I mean, he didn't. I don't believe he was on the field, but he was the theater commander for it. Okay. So he gained credit for it. I think it might have been. I may be getting this confused with another one, but it might have been he was fighting with Rosecrans on his side as well, and I think Rosecrans might have been the commander on the field, but don't quote me on that. But anyway, yeah, it was one of the 2 or 3 small victories he had in Western Virginia against Lee, who as well was not on the field, which really kind of gained his reputation in early 1861 and allowed him to get command of the Army of the Potomac. But kind of what I mean is you have these small engagements that end up really being 15,000 soldiers fighting it out and inflicting 3,000 to 4,000 casualties on each other, and they call that a minor fight. But it's kind of cool how you've got these sort of side battles that then culminate in this historical battle. And I guess, at this moment we can go and we can talk about the battles, but I really like that arching sense of, okay, now you have this small fight that leads into this small fight that leads directly into the main, the main fight. It really, to me, feels authentic in that a way a campaign should be. I think if you're talking about the kind of game you want from a strategy standpoint, where it's like you move your army around the field and then you collide with each other, the thing I think you'd lose there is you just have major battle after major battle. You wouldn't have these small scouting forces kind of skirmishing with each other for a few days or engaging in minor fights prior to an actual engagement. To me, it feels like they got the campaigns right.
The way I was looking at it was not like so the game that I have in mind, which is would be a strategic and tactical aspect, would be imagine Civil War Generals 2, right? And imagine a hex-based map, right, of let's say Virginia and Washington D.C. and possibly the eastern seaboard, right? And you have like a Google Maps kind of scroll wheel, where you can zoom out and then you can move entire armies, and then you can detach maybe a cavalry regiment and do some reconnaissance and have small battles. And as the units get closer, you can zoom in and it kind of not auto-generates because the map would be there, but you zoom in to where the hexes would be. And it would require a lot of horsepower from the computer because CPU-wise of generating every hex. But the Civil War game that I have in mind would be a massive, ultra-realistic game where every hex from Boston all the way down to Georgia, all the way up to Arkansas is represented on the map. It's actually created. Every hex representing so many yards or a mile or miles, right? And then you zoom out like Google Maps to make your big armies move. And as they get closer to each other, you can kind of zoom in and then pull units apart and then maybe have a flanking or sending your cavalry to scout to, deal with fog of war. But I've been wanting a really great strategic and tactical game for Civil War. And the last game to even touch on that was, I think the name of it was Forge of Freedom. And that came out, geez, man, I think I was a teenager at the time. I was just going into the military. It must have been like 18 or something like that. So that was, I don't know, what, 12, 13, 14 years ago. And, you know, and it did a little bit like that, but it had nowhere near the, it kind of auto randomly generated maps, and provinces were massive. So it didn't have that kind of effect that I wanted it to. But I'm really looking, you know, I'm always on the lookout for a game like that. And I'm sure some developers are going to come along the way and make that. But until then, I mean, I really, playing this game for the last couple of days, you know, honestly, to me, the graphics really blow me away on this game. I really look forward to it also hitting mobile. But one thing I wanted to mention about this game that really kind of there's actually two things, if I could mention. So I was playing today, and I kind of noticed something. I don't know, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't notice this in the first Ultimate General Gettysburg. In this one, it looks like you can capture enemy units.
Yes,
I had actual, yeah. And were you able to do that in the original Ultimate General Gettysburg?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I don't recall if you could, but I remember like I literally captured like 3 Confederate brigades, and I was like, I was like jumping for joy because I captured about like 5,000 of them out of their 16,000 man force. So that's a pretty large number. And the other thing is, I noticed my divisional leaders can get hit. Like I got Sherman wounded, I got Porter wounded, I got pretty much 3/4 of my divisional commanders wounded, so that didn't turn out too well for me. But it kind of gives you that realism in the game, you know, that they're not just this icon here and they're immune to the battle. Your leaders can get shot, so you got to kind of like, all right, do I want to commit Sherman, or maybe I should take another brigade commander that's not as effective as him, and maybe put him as a sacrificial lamb, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so that's a good point. I mean, it definitely allows commanders to get killed. So why don't you talk a little bit about, how do the battles get played out? So we've talked about the campaign map. We talked about kind of what the basic premise is. You build this force around your character, and you assemble divisions and corps and things like that. And you do want an infantry brigade, you want artillery. You kind of have this full customization of your own personal army. But how do you fight? Why don't you kind of talk people through that?
Well, it's going to be very similar to Ultimate General Gettysburg. So your forces move onto the map, and they come out from the corners of the map. And one thing I got to mention that I gotta admit it to Game Labs, the way they did command and control of this game, I didn't think this was going to be implemented efficiently because it was going to be really difficult, but they nailed it. When your units come on the map, you're dealing with entire corps, divisions. And if you're dealing with individual regiments and brigades, it can get overwhelming quick. But the command and control system that they made is simple and easy to use. So I literally had I would say probably maybe 5 brigades and maybe 2, 3, 4 regiments. And then I had another corps coming up on my right flank, and I'm just looking at this. I'm like, oh man, I got to move every single unit. I got to pause the game and just move them. All you have to do literally is on the bottom, it says first corps, second corps, and then I'll have divisions. You just click on second division of the third corps and just click on that and tell them where to go, and they'll just move. It's simple. And you can and one real cool thing that I really like is if you select third division, second corps, whatever, you can actually make a line along the map of where you want them to form up. And I could tell they spent time thinking about this, because the entire system that they designed in terms of command and control is perfectly implemented. So I got to give my hats off for them doing that.
So basically what you're talking about is you select, this basically going into a battle, You have corps that are assigned under you. You know, you build the army, you build the brigades and the divisions, but then they've got a corps that's, you know, under you. You click on that, or you click on a division, and you click on a spot on the map, and you can automatically form that unit up without clicking each individual unit. It will automatically form a line or, you know, what have you, somewhere on the map.
Yeah. Just like that. Literally, you collect, you know, 3rd Division, 2nd Corps, and then, like, let's say you want them to form up along a river. You just click, and then you just trace along that river, and that division will set up along that side of the river. You're just drawing a line along that river, and they'll form up that way. And this is, I mean, you know, this is a huge thing, and it took time to do this, because I remember, I don't know if you remember the old Gettysburg game, Sid Meier's Gettysburg, this is kind of crafted off of. This game was inspired off that, and you can easily tell from numerous trademarks, from numerous features that they have in the gameplay. In Sid Meier's, it gets overwhelming, especially if you're playing like a full day battle and there's like dozens and dozens of regiments on the field. I'm to the point where you literally have to pause the game and then, you know, move them, unpause it, pause it again, and you're just dealing with this because there's literally dozens of units that you have to move. And for Game Labs to say, all right, listen, we're going to make a full battle. There's going to be dozens and dozens of units on the screen. Do we want players to like pull their hair out and pause the game every few minutes to move them? We got to develop a system to deal with that and make it easy. And they actually sat down and they said, look, let's design this system. This works, and we think our players are going to love it. And I'll be honest, as a player, I love it. I think this is a perfect implementation. I don't think you could have got a better implementation than the system they have with this.
Yeah, and I noticed that it kind of looked like they borrowed from a couple of games, because I noticed it looked like there was a spot as well where you could turn the units over to AI command if you didn't want to micro them, which reminds me kind of the whole take command method in Scourge of War.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about Strategy Wargamer while I was playing this game too.
But just kind of drawing back a bit and talking about the battle. So to your point, you end up on a battlefield, and it's a real-time engagement. So you can pause the game, you can speed it up, you can slow it down, but it fundamentally is a real-time game. And you have brigades, which are the smallest measurement of infantry, infantry, and then you've got batteries of artillery, which vary in size. Brigades
there were
vary.
Regiments in the game too. I just played, I think Manassas. I saw like the 71st New York.
It's so certain units in there they include as regiments, but in reality they're actually brigades. So if you go and when you create your forces, when you create the corps, the army that you carry over battle to battle, you can't manage anything smaller than a brigade. So for the historical battles, and we can talk about those in a minute, but for the historical battles, sometimes the units are named after a regiment or something like that, but it's still fundamentally a brigade organization. So you've got this real-time map, and you basically are given an order. In some cases, like you need to seize a supply wagon from the enemy, and then you got to kind of go forward and take it, and hope you don't take too many losses, or hope you can actually take that supply wagon. And it's kind of opaque. It's not very clear how you win. I took one supply wagon in a mission where I had to take 3 enemy supply wagons, and I ended up getting a victory, but I don't know why. Like I don't know what the victory points were. I don't know, do you get a certain number of points for holding this objective, or that was something I thought Gettysburg actually did a little bit better. In Ultimate General Gettysburg, you had victory locations, and they had a certain number of points you got for holding that location, and if you had more points than the enemy, you'd win, and casualties counted for something in there as well. In this, I don't really know how they calculate any of that. They haven't yet told you what your victory point is worth, what the objective that you're told to take is worth, or what casualties do to all of that. So that's one thing, but it's a real-time battle where basically you take brigades and you're given an order to seize a location, or take a supply wagon, or defend a spot, or rescue a unit, and essentially, to your point, you issue orders to your forces. You can issue them as a division. You can issue them one at a time. You can click on a unit and drag it across the map and see an arrow where it goes, or you can just right-click on a spot where you want the unit to go and it'll go there. It is, from a UI perspective, this game is a gem, and I'm struggling to explain it because at the end of the day, it is so damn simple that you can pick this game up and you can know how to play it within minutes. There is almost no learning curve into figuring out how do I move things around and how do I fight. There's a little bit of assumed knowledge. You want to have the long, you're fighting linear combat. So the idea is to get your brigade with its, line of troops firing all of their weapons at an enemy. And ideally you could get sort of to the side where you're firing all your weapons against a very small number, just the side of an enemy line. But it's hard to explain because it's so damn simple. Jean, you always talk about you want games that are easy to pick up and play and you don't need a tutorial to figure things out. This is one of those.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, using a mouse and keyboard with it was easy. And I can just imagine, and I know what's going to happen when this comes on a tablet or the phone and just moving it with your finger. I think that's going to add a new layer of just easeability and immersion because, using mouse and keyboard is fine. I love it. I'm an old 80s guy, but, when I move it, when I play Ultimate General Gettysburg more on my tablet than I do on my PC, on my iMac. And because I get a kind of, I don't know, I kind of enjoy just moving the units with my finger, it just adds a different layer,
Yeah, and I mean, you probably can do that already if you've got like a Windows touchscreen computer or something like that.
That's true.
I know you're a big Mac guy.
Apple doesn't believe in touchscreen displays for their Macs.
That's so ironic, isn't it? They're like, we need the touchscreen phone and tablet, before other people, popularize it, and then, but for computers, whoa, no touchscreens for us. That's passe.
I remember when Steve. Well, I was thinking about that because I was just like, I wonder why they didn't do it. But I remember Steve Jobs said something like, I think like 09 or 08. He said they looked into it, but the dexterity, like when you're tapping on a screen over a course of 15, 20 minutes, you get what do you call that thing? Carpal tunnel, or I forgot when your hand gets in pain when it's not level.
Huh. Yeah, I guess it could be carpal. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but that's interesting.
Yeah,
anyway, so the premise is you build this unit, and then you have these linked battles that you go in and you fight, and you fight them in a real time manner where you control your forces. Sometimes you get additional. It's very similar in the battles to Panzer Corps in that you bring your corps into the fight, but then depending on the scenario, you get certain other units outside of your own that you get to fight with as well. So it's very similar to Panzer Corps in that sense, where you have core and you have non-core units. And as you fight, you take casualties, your units gain experience, you can have your generals killed or wounded. If you lose too many men, the unit can be destroyed. That's kind of the big problem is, when your troops retreat, you get like this little white icon over their flag, which symbolizes they're retreating, which is fine. They can rally, they can reform. But you're screwed when the flag goes away and the unit's just running, because that means they're gone. They're done. And actually, if it's a core unit, you lose that unit at the end of the battle. They're no longer combat effective, and they desert off the battlefield, and you never see them again. So that's kind of how the game communicates to you what's happening. But then after the battle, so you fight the battle, and it's a little bit opaque on how you win or you lose, but you fight the battle, and then if you win, you get a bonus to your reputation, and if you lose reputation. And it's cool because it symbolizes that sort of political aspect of the Civil War, where Lincoln's always looking to replace people if they're failing, but looking to reward them if they succeed. Same for Davis. So you gain or lose prestige, and if you go below 0, then you get fired and your game is over. And as you gain prestige, you can use that prestige to build your forces. So I mentioned how you can upgrade weapons and upgrade troops, but you also can use your prestige, which is kind of like political capital, to say, you know what, I want one of my division commanders to be Richard Ewell or Thomas Jackson or whoever. And you can use reputation to buy kind of elite units or, extra really high quality weapons. And then, it's like using political capital. It's like Lee going to Davis and saying, those Enfields that just came in through the blockade, I need those for my army. And Davis is like, well, I guess you just won this battle for me. I'll give you what you ask. I'll reinforce victory. But then if, that does cost you something, you can't keep coming back and back and back and asking for more and more and more. At some point, you're going to exhaust your political capital. And that's kind of a neat element. But the other thing is you gain experience yourself, so you can gain perks. I mentioned how, if you choose to be a regular army officer or a politician, you get certain traits to start with. Well, you can create your own player. In between battles, you get these traits after every fight, and you say, all right, I'm going to add 1 point to organization, which maybe allows you to build a bigger core unit. Or I'll put 1 point toward training, which may allow your troops to stand and fight more effectively. So it's sort of this deck building game almost for your force, and you go through these different battles and try and maximize your performance throughout them. And that's kind of the gist of the game. But where the game really shines, in my opinion, and I'll let you talk about Shiloh if you like, but it is in the historical battles. And I think Shiloh is the most... I haven't played Antietam yet, so maybe that does a good job as well. But Shiloh is the most authentic experience I have ever had with the Battle of Shiloh. And let's be honest, there's not a lot of battles of Shiloh out there in war games. But,
which is kind of sad.
They hit the nail on the head. Like, I can't think of any way they could have done it better.
Yeah, it felt very immersive. Because I'll be honest, when I started playing the game, I started thinking back to the books I was reading, and I was looking at the rivers, and I was just like, "Oh, that's where that is. That's where this is. This is where Sherman is. This is where Prentice is." So it just popped in my head, and I really got immersed into that battle. The only thing that I will say I'm not crazy about. And I understand why they do it, is that – so I play a lot of the historical battles. I didn't go into the campaign much. So I started the Battle of Shiloh.
So you can actually, just to call it out, you can play the campaign, or you can just choose to play individual battles or have create a random battle. So if you want to just play Shiloh, you can do that.
Yeah, that's the first actual battle I believe I played. I saw Shiloh, and I clicked on it because I was like, man – I know it was going to be amazing, and it was. So the game started, and I got 2 corps coming up. I played as the Confederates, and I wanted to surprise the Union. So I was coming up, and the battle was getting like vicious. I mean, it was getting crazy. I was sending out flanking parties, and I was getting everything was going crazy. The line was going back and forth. It was pulsating. It was just going nuts. And all of a sudden, a pop-up came on the screen and said, your other corps is approaching, the left flank of the Union Army. And I'm like, what? And I click, my mouse, and all of a sudden it rips me away from that section of the battlefield, and it gives me a completely different section. It says, all right, this is your 3rd Corps, and it's coming on the field. And I'm just like, wait, I want to kind of continue that battle. And so this is not the whole battlefield. And I was just kind of stumped for a second. I'm like, wait, what's going on? So the game is broken up into 2 sections. And so I was kind of perplexed, but, I continued playing. And that battle on the right-hand side of Shiloh was getting more vicious and more vicious, and it was going crazy. And after 15 minutes, my units were routing, their units were routing, we were pushing back and forth, and I was getting the upper hand, and a pop-up comes up. And I'm just like, now let's go back to the other side of the battlefield and see what's going on. And I'm like, no, I don't want to see what's going on. I don't want to continue what's going on here. And it rips me from the battle again and throws me back to the other left-hand side of the battlefield. And one thing I will say, at least my units were exactly where I left them. Some games don't do that, but it kind of I don't like that. I honestly feel like when I'm playing a historical battle, I want to be saying, here's the battlefield. The Union is somewhere here. Your job is to beat the Union. Your job is to rout the Union Army. Let me play from start to finish. I don't like, okay, I need you to take these 2 objectives. Once you do this, you can go to another side of the battlefield, complete those objectives, come back to, and it takes a lot of the immersion out. And I felt more like I was, like someone was holding my hand through the battle. I didn't feel like I was the commanding general. I felt like, okay, you did this, now you get to go to there and do this. And I lost a lot of immersion when I was doing that.
It's interesting you say that, because I had the exact opposite opinion of that. So I will call out, the experience you're talking about where you get ripped out of one part of the battlefield and brought to another, that's not in every historical battle. So Bull Run is not like that. Bull Run, you kind of start the battle. You're given the order to scout the stone bridge, the historical stone bridge over, I think it was the Bull Run Creek. And then, you get a pop-up like you said, but it's all still on the same map. And it says like, oh, your troops are coming down the left flank. And now you have to attack Matthews Hill. And you attack Matthews Hill, and you take the hill, and if you're the Union, and you get a pop-up, and it says, okay, now you have to move on to Henry House Hill. And it gives you a little bit of information about it. It's like Jackson's coming up, and you got to, sweep the Confederates from the field. But it's all the same.
And I agree with you on that. It does, tell you take this hill and then Henry House Hill. It also kind of keeps some of the map. Like I remember when I was I finished Matthews Hill, and I was like, where's Henry House Hill? And it was kind of like covered in black. You couldn't even see it. And then after I took some Union forces toward the other side of the river, then it said, okay, now Confederates are rallying by Henry House Hill. And then it gave me the bottom side of the map. And I can understand for some players, this is a really good, like for you, for example, you'd like that. I'm more of the type of player that I'm just like, give me the map. Tell me, this is the battle. This is where the Confederates are. They're somewhere in this area. Your job is to win, go. And, or have two different modes. Have a mode where, you're taking objectives, or have another mode where it says, hey, have at it. And the one thing that popped up in my head when I was playing this game is I noticed Scourge of War. I knew Scourge of War has a couple of scenarios that I really like. Like, for example, and I wish they did this. Game Labs did this in this game. Like I played the Antietam side of Scourge of War, and you could literally play from like 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. before even a shot's fired at Antietam, and go like hour by hour by hour throughout the whole day without anything skipping. You're literally just given a task. Okay, your army's here, the Union's somewhere over there. Good luck. And you're jumping from different sides of the battlefield. You're moving units here or there. You're not completing objectives. Your objective is to win. Your objective is not to take this hill or that hill. Your objective is to find a way to win this battle. And the one awesome reason why I love doing it is because it gives you different ways to win. Like in Manassas, you have to take Matthews Hill, right? And then Henry House Hill. Well, I want to be able to play a scenario where maybe those two are not where the battlefield is going to be done. I don't want to retrace the historical steps because I know exactly what's going to happen in history. I could pick up a book and say, all right, I know where the Confederates are going to be. I know where the Union's going to be. And I want to change that up a little bit. I want to, instead of attacking Matthew House Hill, maybe I'll send a rear detachment and maybe, I don't know, do something crazy like have them go around the entire flank and flank them at Henry House Hill before I even attack Matthews Hill. It changed the game up quite a bit. So there's a different outcome. Maybe the Union will win Manassas because I tried a completely different strategy. But in this, when you walk a player through these, it's like, the chances of you having a different outcome than history is very rare. Unless you, I don't know, unless you try a different tactic on Henry House Hill or something like that. Where the Confederates going to be. Where everything's going to happen. I like games that kind of let me go on my own. Let me try something else.
Yeah, I personally enjoy it, and here's why. So with the way it's doing it with this, and I'm specifically talking about Bull Run. I'll come back to Shiloh because Shiloh's a slightly different way they handle that battle than they handle other battles. But what I really like about the way they handle it is it gives you the reason the battles occurred where they did. So to your point, sure, the Union could have swung all the way around the Confederate Army. Lee could have swung all the way around the Union flank at Gettysburg. But there are reasons they didn't, right? If you send 4 brigades all the way around the Confederate Army, well, great. Now, Johnston has 4 brigades of yours that he can easily cut off and destroy while the rest of your army sits back and tries to do something about it. But I think what it does is this sort of episodic nature of the battles is it explains, okay, here are the objectives, and here's why, because the enemy's forming up on this hill. I think one thing that a lot of games, and I think Ultimate General Gettysburg struggled with as well, is a lot of war games struggle with this, go take this hill, and you take the hill and you win. But it doesn't necessarily reflect the result of the battle. It's just sort of like, okay, we know this hill was important historically, therefore you should take this hill, but it doesn't reflect reality. You know, maybe you take the hill, but you're about to lose it, but the scenario just ends in time. Like that doesn't explain that, you know, you really actually won the battle. It's just sort of you accomplished the historical goalpost. And I don't feel the game does that in this sense. And this is why, is because when you attack the hill, it tells you you're attacking the hill because the Confederates are forming up here. You can still swing around the enemy. You can still flank him if you really want to. You know, Henry House Hill isn't totally blocked off. It's dark, but it's dark because you have no line of sight on it. It's not dark because you can't move anyone there. That map is not off limits in that battle. Shiloh's different. We'll talk about it in a minute. But you can move over there if you really, really want to. But what it's doing is it's telling you, okay, here's why you're attacking this hill. And then when you successfully attack it, it's telling you, here's why you're attacking this other hill. Because Jackson's forming up and the Confederates are rallying here. It's not, this hill is magically worth 5,000 victory points. It's the enemy's here.
The only thing is, I mean, like, the reason I play these games because I want to immerse myself into the position of the general. You know, like, I want to be immersed. Like, for example, I'll give you going back to Scourge of War, you know, like, the game puts you at like 5 a.m. You're General Lee. Your job is to beat the Union. I'll hold Antietam or Sharpsburg, and win the battle. And, you know, form a strategy. And I thought of one in my head. And I said, all right, well, I'm not going to hold the wheat field. I'm going to pull my forces back to the Sharpsburg, and I'll just consolidate them, make a tighter line. And, you know, and I won the battle, and I remember, and I really swamped the Union. But the reason why I do things like that, and I understand, you know, you want to hold here because it's the best thing, but I don't like when games hold my hand and walk me through it. The whole point of a game is to kind of saying, all right, you're in charge. What would you do different? And when I feel like when you're kind of like, you know, do this because it's the most logical choice. Well, I don't want to do the most logical choice. I want to do something different. You know, like I want to go out of bounds. I want to try something different. And that's probably why I like a lot of games like Hearts of Iron, because there's always a different outcome. There's always a different thing. I honestly, like, I don't like playing games that say, all right, well, you have to land here because it's the most logical, and you have to attack here because, this is what happened historically and it's your best shot. I like kind of surprising the enemy. I kind of saying, wow, I didn't see that coming at all. You know, I want to surprise the other player or the computer and be like, holy crap, he just did this. I wasn't expecting him to be here. You know, a kind of, spontaneous, different, I want to be put in the general spot and make decisions on my own, what I think is best, not what historically is best.
So you'd land at Pas de Calais to spite history, even if it means having your army massacred.
No, you know what I do a lot? I land in Denmark or on the east of the Netherlands, between the Netherlands border and Denmark. I land right over there, and I always catch Germany by surprise. I usually end up in Berlin within like a few weeks, and there's some hard fighting, but I surprised the AI a lot.
I guess I don't view it as hand-holding because, to me, it's telling the story, and you can fight it out however you want. And what it's also doing is, like, let's not pretend that a general has no other inputs that are coming in. A lot of the way that they're worded is, okay, the enemy's rallying here. Well, one way of looking at it is saying the immersion is being taken out of it. The other way of looking at it is kind of how Scourge of War handles it, and I'll touch on that in a minute, is it's a courier telling you, hey, we spotted the enemy, they're reforming here, and then your other general saying, we should really attack them there because they're reforming there. One thing that Scourge of War, I think, does probably a better job of, and obviously I'm biased, I've already mentioned that I'm on the test team, but one thing that it does a really good job of is keeping you immersed, because it does have, most of the scenarios in Scourge of War are not like what you're talking about. Most of them are not 11-hour battles that you fight out everything and you do everything you want to do. Most of them are actually, you go here, you attack this objective, and then that unlocks another objective. But what Scourge of War does is when you accomplish something, you'll get a courier that has orders that's telling you, General Hill is telling you, great job, but now we need you to attack here. So it's you're a cog in the machine, but it's also explaining to you in a way that doesn't break immersion, right? So, I mean, if you're a general and you attack this hill, and now you're saying, I want to attack this other way, but these orders come up and tell you, listen, I don't care what you want to do. You're my subordinate. You're going to go here and do this because I say so. That doesn't break immersion. It's telling you you're getting an order from a superior. You're not Lee doing whatever the hell you want in most of those scenarios, and it works. At least I think it does. But anyway, so you don't agree with the way it kind of walks you through Bull Run. But what I really like, let's go back to Shiloh for a second, because Bull Run is all one map. You get objectives that move based on where you're at, so it's a little bit dynamic. But it's essentially one map, and you fight it out, and things happen and whatever. Shiloh is where you're talking about where you're fighting a battle, and then all of a sudden it zooms you out and brings you to a different battle, which is a different spot in the map of Shiloh. I thought that was really cool. I know you said it broke immersion, but to me it was like, this is almost like a Hollywood, like one of those documentaries where they do the Google Earth thing. They zoom in, you see the fighting, and then all of a sudden, whoop, zooms you out, brings you to a different spot on the battlefield, zooms you in, and then you see how the fight's going. To me, that was very docudrama, movie-like, cinematic, and I thought it worked, in my opinion. But it still follows this whole, you go here, you take this objective, and then it unlocks these other pieces. It works for Shiloh because of this, though. Shiloh, more than any other, Shiloh's like a running engagement, right? So it's like, take this line. Oh, they're reforming up here. Move up there, take this line. Oh, they're reforming up there. Move up there, take this line. It's almost like a running battle, like a cavalry engagement where, they stop, they fight, then they turn around and run, then they stop, they fight, they turn around and run. And I've never seen a game capture Shiloh in that way. And to me, it's a battle of posts. You attack the initial camp, overrun it, then the enemies start to reform near Shiloh Church, so you reform and you attack it, and then you have to move up again, and then you have to attack the Hornet's Nest, and you have to move up again, you have to attack Shiloh, or the Pittsburgh Landing. It makes the battlefield feel very large. It makes it feel very exhausting. It makes it feel like there's just one objective after another objective. It's almost like the Eastern Front, all condensed in World War II, all condensed into like one battle, and it's all a race against time because, at the end of the day, Buell's Army of the Ohio is on the way. So you have to, complete this destruction before the enemy reinforcements arrive if you're the Confederates. Or for the Union, you've got to hang on by the skin of your teeth until your reinforcements arrive.
So the only problem that I have with that is so the problem with Shiloh originally with the battle was, if I remember correctly from the books, was that they attacked in waves, not in their own individual quadrants. So, for example, you had the first corps go forward, and then they smashed into the Union, and then you had the second corps behind them, and they smashed, and the third corps behind them as the final wave and smashed. And it's on paper it looks good. The only problem is in reality the units get mixed up, they lose cohesion, and it becomes a big mess. So in this battle, what I wanted to do is kind of change it up a little bit. I wanted to actually move some forces that I had in the west side of the battlefield to the east to support my attack on the east. And I was just like, well, I can't do that. I would like to, because I want to try a different strategy out. Maybe I can win the battle. This is what A.S. Johnston, or actually his aide, kind of, from what I read, he kind of effed up. But this is what his plan was. Well, I didn't believe in that plan because obviously they didn't win. So let me try something else. And you can't do that. You can't say, all right, let me send these two divisions to support the left flank of the army and try to drive the Union from the left, on their right flank, try to route them on the right. You can't do that because it says you're on the eastern side of the battlefield and you can't move units to the western side.
Well, what you're really asking for is an operational level game, which this is not. Within the context of a battlefield,
you could open. If they had I think probably the way to solve it is probably appeal to both audiences. Have an option there that says, all right, do you want do you want the objective side, or do you want us just give you a map, put the forces on the map, and you go at it? So like a sandbox mode versus a objective mode, and have the user choose, because there might, like you like with the objectives, and I love it. Just sandbox, have at it, and I'm sure it wouldn't take that. It wouldn't be that difficult for them to just flip the switch. I'll put a switch in there and says, "All right, I want a sandbox mode," and just let the limitations be removed.
I don't think Shiloh's a good example of where something like that would work, and here's why. Once the troops are committed to action, and this is something that I think is really easy to lose with war games, once you're formed up in a line of battle and you're engaged, it takes hours to disengage and move even just a couple of miles down the road to a different spot on the battlefield to then form back up into line and get thrown back into combat. Shiloh doesn't work because it's a battle about a time crunch. So once those troops are committed, once those troops are in a battle, it's highly unrealistic to say, all right, now we're going to pull them out and move them to the eastern part of the map, and then they're going to throw forward there. You wouldn't have time. Buell would arrive, night would fall before you'd ever get back into line, especially because it's a very, it's a wilderness-type battle where the roads are crap and there's woods and confusion. I mean, it wouldn't work. In my opinion.
But then if you kind of take that argument, then you could say the whole scenario is not historically accurate, because a lot of the stuff that's happening in the game is not historically accurate, because the way they attack, the way everything, the way the whole game plays out wouldn't be historically accurate in that sense.
It still follows the general flow of the Battle of Shiloh, and I think they do capture that very well. It's probably too easy to deploy in woods and things like that, sure. But it's still, on the whole, it still follows the general ebb and flow of the actual engagement pretty well. I just don't think there's a difference between saying, some units are in line where they shouldn't be, and saying, well, the entire left wing is going to swing over to the right. I mean, I think those are very different asks.
I'm not saying the left wing, but you can, if the Battle of Shiloh was going on, you could literally take a couple of regiments out, or maybe even a division from the right flank, and then move them over to support the left. That's possible. I've walked the battlefields. It's, they're within, you can actually move forces in that aspect. It wouldn't, I don't think it would take so many hours, but it would probably take an hour. But if it's something critical where you want to try a different strategy, and you notice something's not going right, instead of sticking to a strategy that's going to fail, because strategy they're putting in a game fails. Obviously the Confederates lost because of this strategy. And that was one of the major reasons why they lost that battle. And if I want to change it up and say, well, look, I don't like this strategy. I don't believe in it. I don't want to commit to it. Let me change a few things up, try to put like a little spin on this. Maybe with my new strategy, maybe I could win. And that's the one thing that I want them to give me control of. Let me try a few different strategies. And unfortunately, I feel like my hands are tied behind my back. It's still immersive and it's still fun, and it's incredibly fun. But I like untie my hands. Let me put some creative elements into it. And I think that's what it really comes down to. I want the creative aspect where I want to try different things.
I think, and this may be a discussion for a different podcast, but I think what you're really asking for is, in my opinion, and everybody has their own opinion on what works and what doesn't work, but in my opinion, the biggest sin that a lot of war games commit is they give people too much control, too much creativity. What makes a good game is giving people a set of choices and options, but reinforcing that with limitations. A war game can't be everything to everybody. You need to have a very clear design focus on what you're trying to accomplish, what you want the experience and the challenges your users to face. And I think the problem that a lot of war games do is they say, we're going to make this game whatever anybody playing it wants to be, and then you end up with a poorly designed game because you need to have every option open to everybody, and you don't really have a clear vision or focus. And again, this is my opinion. You certainly can, have a different opinion, but I think a lot of games, a lot of war games fall on their face where they're basically like, create the game you want, and then there's no overarching theme or driving focus behind it, because is it a Robert E. Lee simulator? Is it a James Longstreet simulator? I think the thing that, we need to consider is, when you're fighting the Battle of Shiloh, sure, all the forces that are on the field are in your control, but at the end of the day, you're really a corps commander, right? You're commanding your specific units that you're carrying over battle to battle, and there are units that are in this fight that are not part of your core that, you're being told, attack here with these forces. You're not the one saying, I'm going to attack here. You're not Albert Sidney Johnson. You're Braxton Bragg, or you're, Breckinridge. At the end of the day, you're Beauregard. How do you pronounce his name? Beauregard? Beauregard?
Beauregard.
You're him. You're Johnson's adjutant, but you're not the person saying, here's where we're going and here's the objective, because you're a battlefield commander. You're not the overarching army commander. And I think that's... And
I see where you're coming from. I just, honestly, deep down inside, I feel like a game should be what you want it to be, it's different things to different people. Some people want to be put in the shoes of like, hey, do this because like your core commander Johnson telling you to do that. A lot of times I want to say, well, I want to do something different. I feel like there's two different audiences for that. But there was one thing I wanted to touch base with you on. When you were playing the game, I've noticed that one thing I hope they include, because I think this is build 0.66, so it's still in beta. So there's a chance they might change this. But I've noticed that they added a couple of additional tasks to units. One thing I got to mention, I really love that you can detach skirmishers from brigades. Game Lads, thank you for that. That is awesome. And by the way, being able to dismount and remount cavalry, that's another awesome thing. Thank you. But one thing that I'm noticing and I'm hoping they add is the ability to change units from column to line formation. And because obviously when you're in column formation, you can move the unit faster. So there's a pro of being able to switch them. Do you notice, and one question I wanted to ask you, do you notice if you put units on roads, are they moving faster than if you have them in the fields and stuff? Do you notice they're moving?
I don't know about fields, but they seem in Shiloh, if you move along the roads, they seem to move faster. But one thing I will say is, at the very least, I want to mention one other thing, and we'll get back to your point here real quick. But there's another thing where you can snap units to certain objectives or objects. So like if there's a fence and it's got like a little shield, you can right click on that, and then the unit literally gets in line, forms up behind the shield along.
Are you serious?
Yeah, so they'll form up behind that fence in a along the fence. So if the fence has a curve, they'll form up along the fence, and then that allows them to take dramatically less fire because they've got cover. It's not everywhere. It's not every fence. If you see a little silver shield on it, you can click it to it. So like there are some buildings that act as forts, and you do that, and then they get this perk. Or there was a scenario I was fighting where there were like three fences that had shields, and my troops formed up behind it, and one of the fences curved, and the unit curved with it. So it was almost like the guys getting behind a stone wall, getting down on their knees and starting to shoot, and that's phenomenal. I wish you had a road column march, to your point, though, because if I'm trying to move through, through the woods of Shiloh, I don't want to have to physically draw the line across the roads. There should just be a button that I click, like in Scourge of War, where it's like, use roads, and then I tell them to go here, and they'll just take the roads to wherever I told them to take, and they'll move faster in column. I don't know if I need column formation per se, but I need something that will move them into column, whether it's, say, use roads or whatever, so that they move quicker rather than me having to drag, the best route possible.
Yeah, and I noticed I have to do... Well, I noticed, if you, in Manassas I was playing, I told the unit to go from... They were on the right middle of the map, and I told them to go to the top middle of the map. And I remember in Ultimate General Gettysburg when I did this, and there were like rivers and mountains in between them. They would go in a straight line. I'm like, obviously you're not going to go over this bloody, river and stuff like that. But in the game they did. In this game, I noticed the actual unit went and followed like the road or close to it. It went on through fields. So they put a mechanic in the game logic where it's saying, all right, well, you're not going to go over this river. It's going to slow you down. So go over this way, and it kind of made like a 7 kind of shape as the unit was moving. So they do have a little bit of that, but I feel like putting them in, setting up like a positive bonus for like, hey, if you put them in column formation or use roads, that they will move a lot faster. Because I was trying to get them to go to a certain spot, and I think they were all in line formation or whatever formation they were at, and I was like, you got to hurry up a little bit faster. Now I was hoping that column formation would have been more helpful. But another thing I was hoping they would include, they haven't done it yet, and I've noticed this in the Manassas game that I was playing. I would love to have unit wave points. So for example, like you have a brigade on the right-hand side of the map, you tell them to go here, but as soon as they get there, I want them to go south, and then once they get south to head, southeast, and have the whole unit do that to set up wave points. I think that would be kind of useful in the game because I have to kind of like tell my units to go here and then get back to them in like 5 minutes and then tell them to go here and then get back to them in another 10 minutes and then tell them to go here. If I could just kind of do that all at once. Hearts of Iron added that feature, I think, 2 games ago. And it comes in extremely handy because you don't have to kind of like babysit the unit. You can say, all right, I know where they're going. I know where I told them to go, and they're going to be here.
You can kind of do that by drawing their destination. So you can just click and drag where you want them to go, and they'll follow the exact cursor over the map. So you could sort of do that. But yeah, I mean, I'd like either that or what I'd really like is just a little bit more intelligent route making, to your point. Like if I click to go here, follow the roads. Don't walk through the forest. Don't make me drag or give me a command where I can say follow roads or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I agree. The map or the route decision making could be better either through waypoints or some other mechanism to make that a little bit better. One thing I think the game really does hit on well, though, is the confusion that once the battle starts, like your lines get intertwined, units end up all over the place, and I mentioned Shiloh, or an enemy brigade ended up behind my lines and captured my only supply wagon, and then Shiloh does a really good job of, I'm advancing on the left and I routed a unit, I'm advancing here, but on the right there's a resistance, so I've kind of got this hodgepodge of a few guys here, a few guys there, and I lose all sense of cohesion as far as like a continuous front moving forward. I think it does an amazing job of that. And if you read about the Civil War, whether it's the Wilderness, Chancellorsville, Shiloh, that is like in terms of any battlefield where there aren't wide open fields, that's the name of the game. Units getting disorganized and intermingled with other units, and I think they really hit that on the head. I think it's the small stuff. I think it's the route making. It's the following roads. It's the it could be a little bit easier to click units to individual like fences and things like that to get them behind a fence. I don't know why some fences let you get behind them and use them as a defensive and others don't. Seems to be sort of a scenario design tactic, but it'd be great if I could get behind any fence. I see no reason why one is different than the other.
That? Maybe it's a bug.
I don't think it's a bug. I mean, because it actually gives you a shield to say that this is a fence that you can get behind. Like
I've noticed there's a couple of bugs in the game. Like I picked up one where it's kind of weird. If I hit 3rd Division, right, and it highlights all these units, but when I go to the unit and I select on it, it says there's part of the 2nd Division. I'm like, okay, obviously. And plus, the game is at 0.66 build, so vanilla would be 1.0. So, I'm assuming the game's only about 60 to 70% done at this point.
Yeah, Gettysburg was in early access for quite a while. And if we talk about the historical battles they talk about, there's 10 minor battles. They've got Bull Run, Shiloh, Gaines Mill, Malvern Hill, Second Bull Run, Antietam. Those are the really big kind of marquee ones. They also have Aquia Creek and Philippoli, which are kind of like the initial starting battles. But they're not really historically modeled in the way that the Bull Run and Shiloh, etc. are. But they have another 13 minor battles they're adding, so kind of those in between fights during the campaign. And then they're also adding Fredericksburg, which I think will be weird. It'll be interesting to see how they want you to fight Fredericksburg if it doesn't want to turn into a slaughter. Stones River, Chancellorsville, Gettysburg, Chickamauga, Cold Harbor, and then hypothetical battles of Richmond and Washington. Those will all be added in the release version. So to me, that sounds like they still have quite a bit of work. Far more historical battles are coming than are currently in, and 13 minor battles, and they only have 10 in right now. So it definitely sounds like there's a lot of work they're still doing. But one thing I do think we should call out as we kind of get toward the end of the podcast, Ultimate General Gettysburg had multiplayer. Ultimate General Civil War does not, and based on the forums, it doesn't sound like it's something they're intending to add. What are your thoughts on that?
Are you you sure about that?
It's what they said. Now, originally they said they had never intended to put multiplayer in Ultimate General Gettysburg, and then it got added during early access based on some feedback they received from people. But they said that it's not on their roadmap right now in their forums for Ultimate General Civil War.
I think, honestly, nowadays it's very hard to have a game without multiplayer support. I mean, if this was like, the early, 2000s, you can get away with it. 2016, there's very few, if any, games that you can do without having a multiplayer aspect to it. I don't know. That would be something that I would have to. I mean, I would have to kind of like recommend that they really look into that, because that is a major component of every single game. Not only including AAA titles, but even like strategy games. I mean, a good example is even like if you go to HPS Simulations, right? John Tiller games, they have PBEMs. They have a multiplayer component. Even the small games have multiplayer components. I don't think you can. The game will still be great. I'm still gonna, I'll still, play it, and I'll recommend it and everything. But I feel the longevity, you're taking a big hit out of the game, big component of it. Single player is fine. You can play it for a while, but the multiplayer aspect is nowadays it's good. It's good 50-60% of the core of the game, where people live in the game. The single player aspect's fine. People go into it, kill lunch in there, and play Battle of Shiloh and go back to work. But I'll be honest, a lot of my games that I play now on my mobile, tablet, and iMac, a lot of them nowadays I'm playing a lot of multiplayer because, the AI in a lot of games is not the greatest. And you want to have that, that a game with somebody that you can, correspond with, a lot of times I play, what game do I play? Ambition on iOS. And I love communicating with my teammates. I'm like, hey, like one guy would be playing Japan, I'll play Germany. I'm like, hey man, I need you to attack Russia. We'll meet halfway. And we'll set up things like that. And it adds a really cool function to the game, a cool experience. And taking this out, I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I guess I have a more forgiving view of it. I mean, they're going to have 32 battles plus when the game's out totally without multiplayer. And I think it's interesting to me. I think you're right in that every game has multiplayer these days, and it seems to be successful. You have to have it. However, if you actually look at like the market research, it's still, I mean, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's still like only 20 to 30% of players ever touch the multiplayer in a game. So it's one of those things that people are like, I won't buy it if it doesn't have it, but then people don't play it.
You mean like for strategy games, or are you talking about like for AAA?
More so in strategy games. It probably depends on industry, but I played Ultimate General Gettysburg's multiplayer twice, personally. I guess everybody's different. Everybody has different needs, but it's interesting that when you look at a lot of strategy games, the vast majority of people are still relying on the single-player experience. But I do think if you see it doesn't have multiplayer, people don't buy it, which is weird, because just because you buy it because it has multiplayer doesn't mean you're going to ever touch that.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, now that I think about it, I mean, I played the Ultimate General Gettysburg, the multiplayer, maybe a few times. It really depends on the game. For me to kind of work out a good multiplayer, for me to invest my time in, it has to have game center support. That's a big thing for me for iOS, primarily because a lot of other systems. The only one that I've noticed that has an incredible multiplayer system is Slytherin, part of Matrix Games. The games they come out with has an incredible system because it's multi-device compatible. Like you could start a game on your iPad and you could play somebody that has a desktop version of that game, and I think that's amazing. So I always with Slytherin games, I always play multiplayer a lot because they just do it perfectly and they embed it into the game properly. I feel like maybe if with Ultimate General, then again, I play mostly on my iPad. I don't think the iPad version has multiplayer. Let me check real quick. But one thing I'm really looking forward to is this hitting, because I know it's going to come out on the iPad. It's just a matter of time. On the iPad they don't have the multiplayer version of it. Shoot. Chances are they're not going to probably add that for Civil War. Yeah, that's fine. But overall, I'm very happy with this game. One real cool thing I really also like, I wanted to add, is the music effect, the sound effects too. Like, I was setting my artillery, had some soldiers behind them, and I'm hearing them shouting, "Get ready, open fire!" It just those little nuances. I really enjoyed that, and all the background audio that they did. They really put a lot of work into this, and I appreciate them doing it.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely tell that this was a labor of love. It's made by, I forgot his name, but the guy who made the Darth mods for Total War.
Oh, really?
Yep, he made the original Ultimate General Gettysburg, and he made, Ultimate General Civil War. I think his name's Nick. I could be wrong. But same guy. You can certainly see some Total War influences, like when you're deploying your forces on the map. You've got this little square box that very closely resembles Total War, but it's a work in progress. I'm really impressed with it so far. I think we really hit on all kind of the key elements of the game and kind of some pros and cons. But if you're interested in real-time combat games, if you're interested in the Civil War, if you're interested in Napoleonic War, if you're just interested in a good kind of quick, easy to play, easy to pick up war game, I highly recommend it. That's all I got. Did you have anything else you wanted to throw in here before we ride off into the sunset?
No, I honestly think for the price, I think it's $30, right?
Yep, $29.99.
Honestly, for $29.99, this game is going to have a lot of replay value. I'll be honest, if I had to compare it, because there was two games that were on my list, and I had Civilization, I had Ultimate General. If I had to choose between them, definitely Ultimate General. I would probably pay Civilization 6 price for this game, and that would be like $60, primarily because it's very immersive, and it gets me into the battle, and
I'm sure all our listeners are out there screaming at you right now. What the hell is he talking about? Don't charge $60.
Yeah, I mean, I like Civilization, but honestly, I don't know. I'm kind of lately. We should save that for another podcast. But I have some grievances with the last Civilization 6. I don't feel like they're progressing as much as these guys are with this saga here. And I'm looking forward to for the new scenarios that are coming out. Gettysburg is going to be one of them, right?
Yep, it is one of them. I don't think it's going to be handled at all the way that Gettysburg was in Ultimate General Gettysburg, though. Kind of the way we talked about it. That was all scenario-based, individual battles on their own. And this, obviously, as we talked about, really isn't. But it is one of the battles. Harbor. They do have Cold Harbor, which, again, is one of those things like Fredericksburg. Okay, you've kind of got the southern part of the battlefield you could fight it out in and have a more open fight. But Cold Harbor, like, what the hell are you... how the hell are you going to win that if you're on the Union side? And if you're on the Confederate side, it's just like... Yep, okay. Keep shooting at them. Good job. All right.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
They're all dead. Oh, there's more coming.
Because there's literally even in Civil War Generals too, they don't even have a Cold Harbor scenario. I go to Cold Harbor at least a couple times a year because it's only about an hour away from here, or hour and a half. So I like going there, and for them to make a battle for it, Union's probably going to lose each time, but it'll be interesting to reenact it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, unless they're like, hey, maneuver else, something non-historical that might be more up your alley. But
the thing about Cold Harbor was that it was not done right. I mean, like you had one corps attacking at one time and then another corps attacking on a different time. The timing, a lot of times in these Civil War battles, the timing is everything. And in Cold Harbor, the timing was off again. And that's why they didn't break through. A lot of authors say if the timing was right, chances are they could have rolled up the entire Confederate line.
I'm excited for Chickamauga. That's a battle they're going to be looking at, which was, one of the Western theater had so few really large stand-up army versus army fights, even in the Atlanta campaign, which is, now that I'm looking at it, the Atlanta campaign's not in here at all. But
I want Chattanooga. That's what I want.
Yeah, but that's more of a. I mean, there wasn't a huge battle around there, right? It was like a big siege, and then the Union attacked, and the Confederates kind of melted away. But Chickamauga, that was the real kind of the Gettysburg of the West, if you will, almost, or the Second Manassas of the West. One of the few rare stand-up Eastern style fights.
Surprised Longstreet was in that. He was kind of responsible for both. But I kind of like want to reenact the battle on Missionary Ridge. I want to kind of like see if I can beat the Confederates and see, all right, let me try something. Let me see if I can hold this ridge. Maybe I can flank the Union. I don't know, try to some way to hold that siege going on.
Chickamauga would make an interesting operational level game. Yeah, I think by the time the Union's attacking the depleted Confederates on the ridges there, I think you're kind of screwed. But if you can, avoid sending Longstreet out to Knoxville and depleting your forces, if you can, better organize your defenses so that you're not in a spot where you can't depress your guns against the oncoming Union, I think it's a really potential gold mine for a great operational level game. But that's probably a topic for another podcast. Before we go, though, you been drinking anything, or this is the Single Malt Strategy podcast? Do you have anything you want to talk about, adult beverage wise?
No, I've been sticking with soda tonight. I had vodka and I had some one of my favorite beers yesterday. So yesterday was my drinking day, which was probably a bad day because it was the day before the fire department. And you're not really supposed to do that, especially all the crap that I had to carry around, which is very heavy. But I should have saved it for tonight. But I had some nice vodka and mixed it in with some nice local IPA. I meant to add, I've been trying to figure this out. Is it beer before liquor, you never been sicker, or is it liquor before beer, you're in the clear? Is that how it goes?
You got it right. Liquor before beer, you're in the clear. Beer before liquor, never been sicker.
Okay, it kind of explains my whole day then.
Well, I am drinking some Balvenie 14-year-old Caribbean cask, which is a nice single malt scotch that's aged in Caribbean rum cask. So it has you can almost smell or taste kind of the spiciness of it that you'd expect from a rum. So it's an interesting taste. I really enjoy it. It's I had the Balvenie Double Oak before, I think, on the podcast, and really impressed with Balvenie. And I may be mispronouncing it, but from a Scotch standpoint, they make some pretty good Scotch.
I got to try that because if it's the second time, it's definitely. I mean, you can tell you definitely like it, so I might have to give that a try. I've been getting into whiskeys lately too.
Well, you keep talking about that, but every time we have the podcast, you're talking about the beers you're drinking. So we might need to.
Every time I go to because we got a store here, ABC store in Virginia, and every time I go there, I'm like, okay. I can go to Harris Teeter, and they have about a couple dozen new beers from local breweries, and then I can get a nice whiskey or vodka, and I'm like, for some reason, I'm always in a beer mood. I don't know what it is. And I just, I don't know. Lately I've been into beers the last year, I would say.
It's all good. I've got a friend who runs a Crying Eagle Brewery in Louisiana, so if you're ever down there, if you're ever in kind of south central Louisiana,
I'll be sure to check him out, especially if he has a good IPA. I'm obsessed with IPAs.
I'm not sure exactly what their lineup is. They're a brand new brewery. They're like 6 months old, so it's they just started, and they're called Crying Eagle Brewery. They're in Louisiana, so one of those kind of a microbrewery, but not. I mean, it's very much a new operation. So if you're ever down there, check them out.
I'll mention your name. Get the historical gamer discount.
Well, he might not know who the historical gamer is, but anyway. So I think that's going to about do it. We're about an hour and a half, a little bit shy of that. So any last words?
No, guys, and had a great podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Any last words? That sounds a little bit morbid there. Anyway, this is Matt. You can call me the Historical Gamer. For Jean, the Strategy Wargamer. As always, you can check Jean's stuff out at his website, thestrategywargamer.com, or is it just strategywargamer.com?
StrategyWargamer.com.
StrategyWargamer.com. You can check my stuff out on YouTube at The Historical Gamer. And until next time, guys, hope you enjoyed the podcast. This is Matt saying thank you for listening, and we're out.